So they telling y'all we won. That's the word coming out of Washington right now. We won. Victory. The big bad Iranians got on their knees and begged us for mercy. That's what Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, stood up there and said on national television. And I quote, Iran begged for this ceasefire and we all know it. Begged. Let me sit with that for a second. Let me just sit with that word. Begged. 5,000 people are dead. 5,000. The Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil passes through, is still choked up. Gas prices just hit $4.40 a gallon. Oil is at $110 a barrel, and the man standing at the Pentagon podium is telling you this is a win. I need somebody to explain to me what winning looks like, because where I come from, winning don't look like this. Let me break this down for y'all, because they really out here trying to rewrite history in real time. And I ain't about to let that happen. 3 weeks ago, the President of the United States threatened to blow up Iran's power plants. He gave them 48 hours. Then he extended it. Then he extended it again. Then he extended it a third time. Then on Easter Sunday, this man, on a day when Christians celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ, this man posted, and I'm quoting exactly, Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. Then he dropped an F-bomb on Easter. Then he wrote, praise be to Allah, and that was the guy in charge of the negotiations. Then Tuesday came, the deadline, the big moment, and what did Trump do? He posted on Truth Social, a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. A whole civilization. He threatened genocide. Let me say that word clearly because some folks trying to dance around it. When you threaten to wipe out an entire civilization, that ain't tough talk. That ain't negotiation. That's the language of someone who should not have their finger anywhere near a button. And then, an hour later, he said, never mind. We got a deal. 2 weeks. Pakistan helped broker it. Iran sent a 10-point proposal. Trump called it a workable basis. An hour. From a whole civilization will die to we got a deal. In 60 minutes. And Hegseth is calling that a victory. Iran begged, he says. Nah. Let me tell you what happened. The whole world told this man to sit down. 70 Democrats in Congress demanded his removal. Senator Markey stood on the floor and said, and I quote, the impeachment process must begin. Even some Republicans started speaking up. Susan Collins came out and criticized his language. Tucker Carlson, his own media ally, called him out days before. The Pope, the brand new Pope, Pope Leo XIV, came out and called Trump's civilization threat truly unacceptable. When the Pope is telling you to calm down, maybe the problem ain't everybody else. Maybe the problem is you. And you know what kills me? You know what absolutely just makes my blood run cold? While Trump and Hegseth were up there doing their victory dance, while they were telling America we won, while they were spinning this thing like they're some kind of master deal makers, you know what happened? Israel bombed Beirut hours after the ceasefire was announced. Hours, not days, not weeks, hours, and not some small thing neither. The Israeli military called it, and these are their words, the largest coordinated strike in the current war. 100 Hezbollah targets hit in 10 minutes. Central Beirut, residential neighborhoods, commercial areas, no warning, black smoke over the whole city. Ambulances racing through the streets, apartment buildings destroyed, people running. And Israel said, real calm, real matter of fact, this ceasefire doesn't apply to Lebanon. Oh. So you negotiate a ceasefire with one hand and you bomb a capital city with the other? And you call that peace? Lebanon's prime minister accused Israel of escalating at the exact moment his government was trying to negotiate a solution. He said Israel was attacking civilian areas with, and I quote, utter disregard for the principles of international law. 100 women dead in Lebanon, 130 children. Let me say that one more time. 130 children. Over 1 million people displaced. People sleeping in tents on the sidewalks of Beirut. And you know what happened when the ceasefire was announced? Those families, those mothers, those fathers, those kids, they started packing up. They started getting ready to go home. They thought maybe, just maybe, the bombs would stop. And then Netanyahu went on television and said the military would press on. There's a man named Fadi Zaidan, 35 years old. He was living in a tent on the waterfront in Beirut with his parents. When the ceasefire was announced, they packed their bags. They were ready to go back to their home in Nabatea. And then Netanyahu's statement came out, and they stopped. Fadi said, we can't take this anymore. Sleeping in a tent, not showering, the uncertainty, but we'll be targeted if we go home. That's a 35-year-old man who can't go home because the people who just signed a ceasefire are still dropping bombs. And we out here calling this a victory? Now I want y'all to do something for me. I need y'all to really think about this. Imagine if Barack Obama had stood at a podium and said, a whole civilization will die tonight. Imagine if Obama had threatened to destroy an entire country's power grid. Imagine if Obama had dropped F-bombs on Easter and said, praise be to Allah. And then, an hour before his own deadline, backed down and called it a win. Fox News would have lost their minds. They would have called it weakness. They would have called it insanity. They would have had impeachment papers drafted before dinner. But when Trump does it, when Trump threatens genocide and then backs down and calls it genius, Hegseth says Iran begged. I ain't buying it. And neither should you. But let's talk about what this actually means for folks like us. Because all this talk about winning and losing, all this talk about geopolitics and negotiations and the Strait of Hormuz, that's Washington talk. Let me bring it to the kitchen table. You been to the gas station lately? $4.40 a gallon. In some places it's pushing $5. That's because the Strait of Hormuz, where a fifth of the world's oil supply passes through, is still in crisis. Iran choked it during the conflict and it ain't fully reopened. The ceasefire says Iran will reopen it. But you know what Iran actually said? They said safe passage would only be, quote, possible via coordination with Iran's armed forces. That's not reopening. That's a maybe. So while they up there celebrating, your gas bill is going up. Your grocery bill is going up. Everything that gets shipped on a truck, which is everything, costs more when diesel costs more. And that comes out of your pocket. Not Trump's pocket, not Hegseth's pocket, yours. And the 2-week clock is already ticking. 2 weeks. That's what we got. Not a peace deal, not an end to the war, a pause. A 14-day pause while they figure out if they can sit in the same room in Islamabad and negotiate like adults. And you know what? They can't even confirm if both sides are showing up. The White House press secretary said there are discussions about in-person talks, but nothing is final. Nothing is final. But Hegseth is up there saying Iran begged. Man, get out of here with that. And here's the part nobody is talking about. The real obstacle. Iran has approximately 900 pounds of highly enriched uranium buried deep underground. Lindsey Graham says every last ounce has to be removed from Iran. Trump says he doesn't care about that. His own ally says one thing, he says the opposite. So who's running this negotiation? What's the actual plan? What does the finish line look like? Nobody knows. Nobody. We're just lurching from one Truth Social post to the next, hoping this man doesn't blow up the world before breakfast. And I gotta say something about this. Trump, the president of the United States, saw pictures of Iranian civilians forming human chains around power plants and bridges. Mothers, students, athletes Regular people standing around their own infrastructure because they were afraid the most powerful nation on earth was about to destroy it. And you know what Trump said about those human chains? He said they were totally illegal. He said they're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to protect their own families from your bombs. What kind of, man, I ain't even got words for that one. When a man thinks civilians protecting their own children is illegal, something is deeply, fundamentally broken. Look, I know some folks watching this right now are tired of hearing about Iran. I get it. The president himself said the American people would like to see us come home. Yeah, we would. So why ain't we? If the American people want it over, if the polls show the majority disapproves of this war, if 70 members of Congress are calling for your removal, if the Pope himself is calling your threats unacceptable, if your own allies and media are turning on you, then why are we still there? Because this was never about national security. This was never about protecting America. This was about one man's ego and his inability to admit he was wrong. He escalated when he should have negotiated. He threatened when he should have talked. He backed down when he should have never stepped up in the first place. And now he wants you to call it a win. 5,000 dead, 130 children in Lebanon alone, gas at 440, oil at 110, still no plan, still no final deal. Still bombs falling on Beirut. And in 2 weeks, we might be right back where we started. That's what winning looks like to these people. And if you're sitting at home right now, looking at your bills, looking at your gas receipts, watching this chaos unfold and thinking something ain't right, trust your gut, because something ain't right. And the folks who are telling you this is a victory, they the same ones who told you the war would be over in a week. They the same ones who said Iran's military was obliterated. They the same ones who said nobody would get hurt. Ask yourself, when they were wrong about all of that, why would they be right about this? They wouldn't. And deep down, you know it. Drop a comment and tell me, who actually won here? Because from where I'm sitting, the only people who lost are the regular folks on both sides. The American family paying $5 for gas. The Iranian mother standing in front of a power plant hoping it don't get bombed. The Lebanese father sleeping in a tent with his kids wondering if he could ever go home. Those are the people who lost. And ain't nobody in Washington talking about them. Subscribe, because in 2 weeks, this whole thing might explode again. And I'm going to be right here telling you the truth when nobody else will. That's Straight Talk. I'm Curtis Banks, and I ain't done talking. Not by a long shot.